Okay, so the addictions counseling program, really the kinds of um, support that would be offered by anybody in the addictions counseling profession is the support from initiation of sobriety or thought or consideration of sobriety, all the way into preventative relapse treatment and long-term recovery, including family support. And there's a lots of different opportunity for an addiction counselor to work in a variety of different settings. Really, the thing that you should be very mindful of if you're interested in this program and in this profession as a whole is personal suitability. So are you a compassionate individual that's interested in the field of addictions? Are you interested in kind of shattering the stigma of addiction and addiction recovery and really being a supportive person that will walk alongside people who are struggling, and help them in their treatment and provide them with the best care? And if that's something that really speaks to you, either as a person in recovery yourself or as a person who is interested in the recovery of others, then this is a really great starting point for you. The Addiction Counseling Diploma program has a really high ratio of student to instructor time. So our classes are quite small for this program, which is great. It means that you can do a lot of one-to-one kind of discussion, and you can have a lot of practice for those counseling skills before you go into practicum and before you enter the profession. And that's really kind of what we ideally want to see, because we want you to feel comfortable in that setting before enter it. We also have really affordable tuition at the college, which is great, especially because school is super expensive. And I think I can speak for my colleagues when I say that they're really great educators. And so those are all things that I think make this program particularly stand out. Addiction counselors, as I was saying before, work in a variety of settings, and some of you may already be working in those settings. Some of you may just be interested in those settings, but treatment and recovery centers are obviously really common. Health programs and health facilities are also quite common. Family and youth centers, women's shelters, shelters for the unhoused, all of those kinds of places would be quite common to find an addiction counselor or someone with similar credentials within. There are lots of jobs, they're just listed here, but these are the kinds of jobs that our students typically go to. So we see them being employed in these facilities after they complete their programs. A lot of students work in specialized programs and specialized areas. We've got a ton of people joining. I keep seeing you ping ping popping up. I just want to clarify, my name is not Matthew. My name is Alicia David. And so if you have any questions, I'm a university studies instructor and you can ask them for sure. But I am here under Matthew Ostfogels because the link was very silly and wouldn't let me change my name. But anyways, rest assured, my name is Alicia. In terms of transferability, this is a really interesting piece for this course specifically. So some credits may be transferable into other programs at the Northern Lakes College. So we have a lot of students that will segue into, say, our social work program or our practical nurse program, because obviously a really good understanding of addictions and mental health and even counseling skills are hugely applicable in those professions. But we also have a bulk transfer. So basically what that means is that if you have a degree program that is 4 years, if you do a diploma that qualifies for a bulk transfer, 2 of your years are covered. So we have a bulk transfer agreement with the University of Lethbridge for their, what is it called? Bachelor of Health Science program. And they have a specialization in their Bachelor of Health Science program for addictions and mental health. And so that's an option, but the thing to be mindful of with that program is the University of Lethbridge does require you to be on campus. So you'd be transferring from a fully online program after 2 years and then moving down to Lethbridge for the other 2 years of your study. However, the great thing about transferability is that you get something called an honorary exit. So that means that if you do 2 years and you're done and you want to have your diploma, then you get the diploma and you get the credential, and that's great. Additionally, a lot of our coursework specifically on our university studies side of things, which we'll talk about in just a moment here, do transfer to other institutions for other programs. But that would be specific to the program that you're interested in. And it's something that you could work out with one of our college coordinators, or your program coordinator would be able to help you determine that. In terms of how this program is delivered, we use a combination of NLC Anytime, Anywhere and NLC Live Online. So NLC Anytime, Anywhere is our D2L interface. It is basically like a website, if you're not familiar with D2L, that outlines all of your assignments. It houses all of your class recordings, all of the instructor notes, all of the instructor PowerPoints, all of that would be included. Hi, Sydney. And on Live Online, this is what we're doing right now. So this is how your class would be taught. We wouldn't go sit in a classroom like you maybe normally conceptualize when you think of a university or a college program. We would do it all like this. So we'd get to learn from the comfort of our home. I am a huge fan of online learning. I did my degree, my master's, and my doctorate this way. So I'm a big proponent, especially if you live in a rural community. It opens so many doors for you. But the kind of thing to consider is that you need to have access to regular high-speed internet, and you also need to have a computer. So those would be two things that are an absolute must. I would argue that for any post-secondary education now, those two things are typically a must, just because of the way that things have kind of progressed or regressed or whatever throughout time. But especially when it comes to our programs at the college, you absolutely want access to that. If it's not in your home, then you certainly want to be able to go into a Northern Lakes College campus or a local library or something of that nature on a very consistent basis. In terms of admission requirements, you need to be 18 years of age, which is not always a requirement for college and university programs, but it is for this one, just given the nature of the work that you would be doing. You need 60% in English 30-1, or 70% in English 30-2, or 60% in English 0190, which is a college level course that you could do. If you didn't have any of your English, you could do that as a prerequisite, and you can do that English course through us. So you can sign up for that. There are lots of other institutions that also offer English courses that would meet that prerequisite. Again, you'd want to talk to your program coordinator about that. You need to have an assessed or proficiency in the English language. So that means you either have done, say, all of your high school in the English language, that would be a check mark. Or if you have done your high school in a language other than English, then you would need to come in and do an assessment or have that assessment done elsewhere. And then all of your post-secondary transcripts, if you've ever been in a post-secondary program before, need to accompany your application. So your deadlines, in terms of deciding whether or not you want to do this program, is about 4 weeks prior to your term start date. So I think this upcoming year, our term starts September 5th or 6th is normally the vibe. So you would want to have applied by the beginning of August at the very latest. I always say it's better to apply sooner rather than later, just simply because, one, you want to know if you've gotten in and you can plan your life and all of that. But simultaneously, you never know how many people are going to apply for a program, and you want to make sure that you have a seat if you meet the admission requirements. Unfortunately, a lot of our programs, or fortunately, I guess depending on how you look at it, go to wait list. And so what that means is that all of the seats are taken up by people who have the requirements, and then you have to wait until someone drops or someone decides not to attend in order to get in. So I always say, and this is true for any post-secondary program that you ever decide to apply on, the earlier the better in terms of applying. And I don't know if anybody has told you this yet, but today with our virtual open house, they are waiving the application fee. And you also get like your name put into draw for a bunch of stuff. So today is a good day to apply if you're interested, simply because it's free and I'm all about saving money. So that's good. Um, in terms of, there we go, the kind of an overview of what's expected of you for the program. A diploma, any diploma program at the post-secondary level is a 2-year program full-time, unless it's an accelerated program for some reason, but you're still doing 2 years worth of work within that program. So our addiction counseling diploma is a 2 years full-time. However, we do have a part-time option. So you do 1 year full-time and 2 years part-time. And so that's good depending on, what your work and family and life implications are. Sometimes that works out better for students. We're an even split, so you have 11 specialized addiction courses, and then 11 university transfer courses, which are general subject matter, pretty typical of any undergraduate program. And then you also have 2 field placements or practicums that total 700 hours. So you're entering the work field or the workplace with a good amount of experience under your belt at that point. Something to kind of think about is that if you are currently working in the addictions profession in a variety of contexts, sometimes your work placement that you get paid for can also be your practicum placement. So that's something that you're going to want to sort out with your program coordinator pretty quickly after being accepted to make sure that your workplace qualifies. If not, you would need to take that time off of work. Okay. But it's normally works out pretty well for our students that way. In terms of classes, this is all very squished here. On our website, you can just type in addiction counseling diploma and it will come up and you'll see the little hyperlinks for all of these classes and you can click on them and you'll get a better description. But I'll kind of just generally go over them. Most of the time, you can kind of tell what they're about because of the because of the title. So, Introduction to Addiction Studies obviously is just a sampling. I always consider that course like the buffet of all of the other addictions courses that you're going to take. So, that's a little sample platter for you. Introduction to Counseling Skills, same thing. It's the sampling of those skills and theories that you would need in a counseling setting. Then we get into more specific stuff. So, assessment of addiction, counseling theories and approaches, prevention and relapse, working with families, suicide and mental health in addiction, working with groups, and then you have your 2 practicums. So those would be considered program specific courses. From there, you go into university courses. One thing I will say, I kind of have made it seem like you do this in a very linear fashion, and some of these classes are linear, but you have this like mixed together. So you might have in a semester 2 addictions courses paired with 2 university studies courses. So just wanted to let you know that before we continue. But in terms of, yeah, Myrna, you can go ahead.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm joining you from Manitoba. So
Woohoo!
I had a question in terms of the practicums when
Yes.
if you were, say I was in this program and it came to the time for the practicums, is there like what details do you have as far as like placements? Like if I was to
Yeah.
do a
So you
placement
would
here in Manitoba and the school is in Alberta, like how does that
Yes.
work?
So we would work with you to find appropriate placements in your area. We can never guarantee any placement to any student because it depends on the credentials of the people that are willing to accept you and take you in as a practicum placement. So sometimes there's, not a lot of places with the right credentials in a particular community, which would mean that you would have to travel. But I would say the vast majority of cases, we find practicum placements within the home communities of our students. That's a really important kind of mandate for us as a college. And so a lot of effort is put into that. I myself, not in this program, have placed people in the Northwest Territories. We've also placed students in British Columbia. We've also had students be placed in Newfoundland. And so that's something that we're very familiar with.
Okay, so you mean, just so I'm hearing correctly,
Yep.
NLC will coordinate and secure the placement for the
Yeah,
student or
so
with the student, like, because
typically it's done with the student in
okay,
consultation with the student. Yeah.
okay, yeah,
There
because
are cases in which we wouldn't be able to consult with you if,
hmm
there was
yeah,
a specific place. But
yeah.
normally how practicum placements work is we would say, like what are the areas that you're interested in working in? What are the places in your community that have addiction counselors? What kinds of places are you interested in? And then we would go from there.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to clear that up because some of the post-secondary institutes that I work with on behalf of well, first of all, sorry, I manage the post-secondary education funding for my First Nation community, and some of the
Oh,
some
good.
of
Such
the
important work.
students some of the students that I work with and that we fund, when it comes time for their practicum placement, many of them, the responsibility to secure that placement falls on them, like
Oh, yeah, no.
they're provided with the package, right, with all of the standards, the criteria and so forth for that practicum placement, and it's up to them to secure the placement. So that's why I just wanted to clarify that if you secure the placement or the student does, like who's the one that coordinates it and takes care of that.
Yeah, so we predominantly do the coordination. The kinds of things that we would get students to do is, just as an example, I've had to place students in communities that have very poor internet access for a variety of reasons because they're very rural or very remote. I would send the student the packet of paperwork to fill out, and the student would then go to their placement and get the person to fill it out. But I had already talked to their placement, say, on the phone. So that would be the kind of common in between that we might get students to do if I cannot get to the community and they don't have good internet service to be able to send or fax things through. But that would really be the only kind of circumstance for that. The students wouldn't be asked to independently, none of you would be asked to independently kind of figure that out completely on your own. You would definitely have the support of a coordinator and an instructor to kind of work you through all of that. You're very welcome. That's a great question. Sydney, you have your hand up. You can go ahead.
Hi, so I just had a few questions. So I live in Saskatchewan right now, but
Okay.
I was just wondering if, I mean, I live in a small town of 600 people right now, but
Okay,
so
yes.
yeah, small town. So just wondering, do I do it here or do I have to go to a city? Because city is
Well,
60 kilometers from us. So
yeah, I
yeah,
mean, it would really just depend on the resources available in your community. I would guess, although I might be wrong, that if you only have 600 people in your town, there isn't a highly certified addictions counseling center in your community. Although, honestly, sometimes it surprises me where these things exist.
yeah, and like
But
here's
if you
nothing. Here's pretty much
Yeah,
nothing.
so
Just
in
yeah,
that case, you would be asked to go somewhere else. However, we would work with you. So, like, if you have family or friends that live in another community that does have an addiction counseling center or another place that you could do practicum, we would look there first. We wouldn't just say, you have to go to this city because it's the only one because we've decided. We would definitely talk to you and see if there's any places near you or even not near you that you could have a more feasible accommodation and things like that.
oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yes. So then my other question was, do we ever like do a face-to-face meetup like with the class or anything like that?
No. So back in my day when I taught this program, we definitely did have to do, we did lab weeks is what they were called. Now those have been put online. So there is one session at the very beginning of your program that is mandatory, and it's an online session just like this, but it is facilitated all online. And that's because we've had such an increase in students coming from all sorts of wonderful places, as you both have kind of
Yeah.
exhibited today, and we want to make sure that there isn't a huge amount of additional cost required of those students. So we do it all online.
Okay, that sounds really good. Thank you.
Good, you're very welcome. Okay, so back to the university studies courses, we see Introduction to Pharmacology, which has a lot of applicability, obviously, in terms of your profession, introduction to English language and literature, critical reading and writing, ethics in helping professions, health education, which is my baby. That's the course that I teach predominantly. Introduction to Indigenous issues, leadership in the helping professions. I also teach that one quite a lot. Psychology in the healthcare profession, developmental psychology of the lifespan, an introduction to the study of society, which is a sociology course, and also a sociology of deviance and conformity, which is like a great course. Sociology courses tend to be beloved by addiction students because they kind of explain some of the systemic issues that cause addiction in the first place. So they're super interesting, very applicable, and it's kind of a nice way to kind of get a general overview of a lot of different subjects. So those kind of are neat, and they also provide you a little bit of a brain break, so to speak, from the really heavy addiction content. So I always really like that balance for students between university studies and program specific coursework. In terms of career prospects, this is like the tiniest font imaginable. Whoever made these slides, I don't know if you can see it better than I can. Maybe I'm just getting old and my eyes are failing me here. But on the very low end in terms of salary, people with an addictions counseling diploma can expect between $16 to $29 an hour. In terms of professional competency that you would need besides the credential, is you need to be able to either pass or produce a criminal record check. Of course, a lot of individuals that have a history with sobriety and recovery also experience the consequences of criminality in different contexts of that. And so there are a lot of centers that focus on hiring people who have lived experience with addiction, and they are more open to people who have a criminal record than, say, if you were to become an elementary school teacher. And so there are accommodations made. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a perfectly clean criminal record check, but you need to be able to produce one. And you also need to be aware that whatever is on the criminal record is up to the employer and up to the practicum agency to determine whether or not you are a suitable candidate for them. So it's just something to be kind of mindful of. Also, if you're working with children, especially if you're working in a women's violence shelter or things of that nature where there are children constantly present, you would also need a vulnerable sector check as well. Or depending on the province that you live in, they're called like child care checks or something to that effect. In terms of jobs, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll see if I can like zoom in for you. I don't know if I'm zooming in for you or if I'm just zooming in for me. But when my boss typed in the credentials on the Canadian Job Bank just this morning, there were 705 positions across Canada for the credentials. And you can see here, there's just one by the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and the wage is between $33,000 and $40,000. So, or yes, $33,000 and $40,000. And so those are all quite commonly found, and it's an industry that seems to be growing, which is great because we love to have support for people who are experiencing difficulty in terms of sobriety and mental health and all of that. Myrna, I think you had your hand up again. Go ahead.
I just I just had a question in terms of like the practicum placement and where like what time of year the academic year that would fall, because like going with one of our participants there when he pointed out about him being from a small rural community and the possibility that his practicum he'd have to commute,
Yeah.
like in terms of weather conditions when if any of those students have to travel, right?
Yeah,
So
for
like
sure.
where on this academics calendar would those practicums fall?
Typically, all of our practicums happen in the spring term. So our spring term starts in May and ends at the end of June. To get your hours in, depending on how your practicum is structured, you might need to start as early as the end of March or April, especially if you're doing your practicum part-time or things of that nature. But yeah, we try to keep it in the spring for those weather reasons. So there are different circumstances where that maybe wouldn't be the case for your particular individual situation. But for the majority of our students, they are expected to complete them in the spring. Okay. This is a really good thing to take out your phone and take a little picture of. These are our contact people for our program. Denise is the program coordinator for the addictions counseling program as well as the social work program. So if you have any specific questions related to you and your practicum placement or expectations of you or anything like that, she would be a really great person. Okay.